All right, everybody. This is Scott Neal here with Neal Insurance Brokers in beautiful Roanoke, Texas. Hope y'all are enjoying the weather. I've got my very good friend, mentor, Chris Green. He's the flood insurance guru, and we do a lot of stuff together. And we were actually on a Zoom call prior to this, and we were talking about the difference between when there's flooding, if that's covered on a standard home insurance, and what's defined as flood or water caused by lifting shingles or whatever. We had some heavy rains here in DFW, and people were just not certain on what was covered, what wasn't. So we do a lot of auto home insurance and business insurance where there's a lot of buildings that are covered in our agency. And so Chris is going to help me kind of walk through what is flood, what's a covered peril caused by water damage when that applies by acts of nature and stuff like that, because we want to set the record straight. And so Chris, introduce yourself and welcome to the call, man.
Hi, my name's Chris Green. I'm with the Flood Insurance Group, where I've been doing flood education and flood insurance now for almost 20 years.
Man, that's awesome, dude. Yeah. And so Chris is a master of what's flood, what's not, what's covered. So let me give you a scenario, Chris. I had a client call the other day, and actually had several clients. So one situation was a client called in and they had heavy rains hit their house. They had high winds, and they had basically rain come in through the chimney because the area around the chimney was lifted by the high winds, and that caused rain to intrude into the home, and it got the drywall all messed up and all that. And that's going to be covered because the adjuster found out the wind was the driving factor that opened the shingles that caused the rain to come in. So the actual cause of loss is going to be wind. Even though it causes rain to come in, that's going to be covered typically on most insurances. There wasn't any pre-existing damage, and the home was up to snuff. I think it was a newer roof, but they actually found that that's going to be covered. We had a different situation where someone, their bedroom had a leak from rain, and basically they called and filed a claim, and it was denied because they had no proof of when that caused the rain to come in. They just had a shingle that basically it wasn't lined up when the contractor had done their job. So it was actually faulty work on the contractor, and the roof wasn't installed correctly. And that claim was actually denied. So now they have to go after like the contractor. So there's different situations. And then we had a third situation where a client called in and they just had water rising up from their slab into their home. And that wasn't covered because that was technically a flood coverage. So can you explain when flood applies, when it doesn't, and things like that?
Yeah, so let's talk about, all the scenarios you've talked about, great ones. Another one I'll get a lot is, hey, my toilet backed up, my septic backed up, my sewer backed up, hey, my house is flooded. Or, hey, my washing machine busted, my house flooded. And we use the word flooded so loosely, but let's talk about really, hey, what is flood and what is not flood? So flood insurance is, as I said, a separate coverage that's typically not covered by home insurance, and it covers surface water. So you talked about that water rising up. What we see a lot, like if you look in areas like Wisconsin, Minnesota, during snowmelt season, you'll see water coming out of the water table because of all the snow that's melting. That's actually not flood insurance or flood damage because it came out of the ground. It has to be surface water typically. So like rushing water from a river or creek. What we saw happen down in Wembley more than a decade ago, what we saw happen recently down in Texas as well. That's a good example of flood. And typically what has to happen, it has to be your property and at least one other property or 2 acres in your property that's damaged. And the water actually has to come in your property.
Got it.
That's flood damage, and so we get that a lot. Like you said, the wind driven. We typically see that more in areas where you've got hurricanes. But the most common one I probably also hear is the water backup from the toilet, the washing machine, and a lot of people are like, "I'm like, look, this is why you want to make sure your home insurance coverages and your flood insurance coverages kind of mirror each other if possible."
Hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing, man. A lot of our clients don't have flood because they're not in a flood zone or whatever. and it's something we talk about, but they often don't take it because it's a $1,200, $2,000 premium that they'd never used or never thought about it
Let's talk
until.
about the flood zones real quick. And this is kind of where people, I don't want to say they get in trouble, but what happens, everybody's in a flood zone. You may be in a low risk flood zone, high risk flood zone, but for so long we are associated risk and rates with zones. Well, the federal flood insurance program doesn't even use flood zones to determine the rates anymore. So what I tell people, like they're like, hey, what are the actual chances of my property flooding? Well, I built a flood risk tool on our website, floodinsuranceguru.com, for this exact reason. I wanted people to understand, hey, what is my real risk? How close to water I am? Because what people don't realize is the closer you are to a floodway, which is the overflow area of the water source, the higher your premium is going to be. So the flood zone really doesn't have much to do with it at all.
Got it.
And I got to tell joke with people. I say, look, in-laws and floods have a lot in common. They show up at your time at the worst door, worst time, and they're always uninvited.
Yeah, they come a knocking, man, wondering where.
Or the fact that a flood knows what the boundary is. It's like asking us, hey, do your kids know what a boundary is?
Right, exactly. So flood insurance, do people need to get it even if there may be a one-off storm that happens once every 10 years or something that causes it. What's your recommendation on when to look at flood insurance? Because that's not covered on home insurance. So
I
water,
almost
water up.
always recommend people, hey, look, at least look at it. At
Yeah,
least talk to someone who has some kind of flood risk score from 0 to 100 to help you understand, hey, what are the actual chances of my property flooding? Because I said it's happening more and more. And in fact, almost 40% of flood claims come out of areas where flood insurance is not required. So
got it.
what your bank's
Got it.
required. Your bank is simply going off some regulatory map that's probably 10 years out of date.
Yeah, and it's a 100-year floodplain or something like
Yeah, it's a
that or
100-year
whatever.
flood zone. When I tell people, look at land development, and I'll tell you this. I know you're a good distance from it, but Austin actually has one of the most advanced flood mapping systems in the country. So they do their own flood mapping system on top of the federal program that's way more advanced.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they're well known across the entire world for it. But what they're able to do is take land development and actually forecast how flood maps are going to change over the next decade. Because what people don't realize is like when as land develops, you put all this cement or this asphalt in, that water has to go somewhere. And typically it's settling in low-lying areas.
Hmm. Got it. So everybody needs to look at flood. Just to differentiate, flood is water up, correct?
Water, surface water.
It's surface water up.
Yep.
If it's snow, that's a different situation. We don't have that problem here in
Yes.
Texas. And we
Typically
also
you have flash flooding problems, like we
yeah, and
saw
we
in Dallas a couple years ago.
yeah, and we also don't have basements here either,
Yeah.
so we don't have that big issue. But you mentioned sewer and drain backup. That's an endorsement on home insurance. Usually it covers up to 5, 10, $20,000. It's called sewer and drain backup. That's if there's a septic reversal or something like that. And then another water peril is that you can add as an endorsement is your hidden water seepage and leakage, which is from a leaky pipe that causes damage over time. That's not because most home insurance covers an immediate pop of that pipe, that burst pipe. It floods the home. That's going to be covered on most home policies, right? Usually with not a limit. Some carriers do fifty
I'll tell you
thousand.
a quick story. I was an auto and home insurance agent more than a decade ago before I got into flood only. And I have a customer inside of town that had a $400,000 water loss, totaled the house. And what it
Gee,
was a toilet, leaky toilet that started on the third floor that finally gave way and flooded 3 floors down. Well, they were out of town for like a month. And they
oh
came back
no.
home and it was a total loss.
Got it. Well, that's another good reason, Chris, is that's why landlord policies limit and vacant home policies limit water damage because the homeowner isn't there monitoring and it's just proven that, tenants aren't as responsible as the homeowners because they're not the ones paying the bills for the damage. So that's why landlord policies usually limit sewer and drain backup and water coverages to 5, 10, or $20,000 max, right? Is
Yep.
that's kind of what we're seeing. So,
No, water backup was all what I used to joke with people too. Sometimes I say, look, with septic, a lot of times people may not need it because the way the sewer systems work. When I was told people, look, if you got a sewer, you definitely need water backup no matter what.
yeah, if you have a septic, we always require it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, we want that's why I was telling even other insurance agents ask if it's sewer or septic because that could define whether what coverage they need.
Right. Exactly. What else do we need to touch on, Chris?
So when it comes to flood too, what you need to understand this is that on flood, you've also got the National Flood Insurance Program, which the government shut down right now. You don't have that available. And you've still got private flood insurance is available. So you can still take out private flood insurance. So if you have a loan closing coming up, there's no wait period. Other than that, outside with most private companies, there's about a 15-day wait period. So just kind of understand that people are like, oh, you can't get flood insurance right now. You absolutely can. You can still get it through private companies,
Got it. Cool.
especially in Texas, man. There's probably 15, 20 different companies we work with in Texas every day.
Well, we are not flood insurance experts. So, Chris, how can people get a hold of you?
Just visit our website, floodinsuranceguru.com. You can visit our YouTube channel, Flood Insurance Guru, where we've got about more than 2,000 flood education videos.
Yeah, you do a ton, man. And everybody in the country, Chris is a big wig in the insurance community, and everyone refers him stuff because it's like me with life insurance. We offer it, but if it's a complex case, we're going to source that out to someone more trusted, and we do that with flood. So, Chris, thank you so much, man. Look forward to getting you back on here again. And like I said, if you need to reach me, it's nealinsurance.com or 682 237 7975, guys. Thank you so much.